All right, welcome back. Looks like we're diving into some serious interview prep today. Those big tech companies love to throw at you all these articles and notes you've sent over. It's all about algorithms.
Definitely a hot topic.
But it's not just about, like, memorizing every algorithm out there, right? There's this idea of algorithmic intuition that keeps popping up.
Yeah, it's more about that instinct you develop, that sense of how to approach a coding problem.
Not just finding a solution.
Right, not just any solution. It's about recognizing the best one, the one that's elegant, efficient, really impressive. And the Algo Academy blog you've been digging into, they really nail WHY this matters, especially in those tough interview scenarios.
So it's like instead of just brute forcing your way through, you can kind of see the clever shortcuts, the connections others might miss.
Exactly.
That's got to be a huge advantage, especially when the pressure's on.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're in the interview, whiteboard's up, and they hit you with a problem you've never seen before. Algorithmic intuition is what helps you break it down, relate it to patterns you do know, and boom, you've got a solution that blows them away.
Makes total sense. No wonder the Algo Academy folks are making such a big deal about it. But, okay, how do we even define this algorithmic intuition thing? It sounds almost mystical.
It's not magic, though it can feel that way when you see someone with it in action. Think of it as a sixth sense for patterns in code. You're able to quickly grasp the core of a problem, sift through those potential approaches, and zero in on the one that's going to be the most efficient and, like we said, elegant.
Okay, yeah, that makes it more concrete. It's not about memorizing every algorithm under the sun. It's more about training your brain to think algorithmically.
Precisely. The Allo Academy blog uses this great analogy. They say it's like training for a mental marathon.
Oh, I like that.
The more diverse problems you expose yourself to, the better you get at spotting those underlying patterns. And that's what lets you adapt your knowledge to new challenges.
So the more you practice, the quicker you become at recognizing the right tools for the job.
Yeah.
Even if the job itself is brand new.
You got it.
Okay, that's really helpful. So we're starting to get a handle on what algorithmic intuition is. But now I'm thinking, WHY is this so crucial for those tech interviews you're prepping for? What makes this skill stand out?
Well, those interviews are famous for testing your ability to think on your feet,
Right.
solve problems under pressure, optimize your code in real time.
Yeah, I've heard stories about those whiteboard coding sessions.
It can be intense. But the point is, they're not just looking for someone who can regurgitate code from memory. Interviewers want to see that spark of insight. They want to see that you can apply your knowledge in creative ways.
So having this strong algorithmic intuition, it's like a signal to them. It tells them that you're not just a coder, you're a problem solver, someone who can handle the unexpected.
Exactly. It shows them that you can think critically, analyze different approaches, and ultimately deliver those elegant and efficient solutions, even when the clock is ticking.
Okay, I'm sold. Algorithmic intuition, it's the secret weapon we need.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin? How do we go from, coding newbie to intuition ninja?
Well, the good news is the Algo Academy blog actually breaks down some really practical steps you can take, and we'll dive into those next. But first, let's really hammer home WHY this skill is such a game changer, especially for those high-stakes tech interviews you're facing.
All right, let's do it. I'm ready to unlock my inner coding ninja.
So you want to transform from, like you said, coding newbie to intuition ninja. It's a journey, but the Algo Academy blog actually lays out some pretty good steps you can take.
Okay, lay it on me. What's step one in this coding transformation?
Well, their first point might sound obvious, but it's practice.
Practice.
And not just banging out lines of code. We're talking about solving a diverse range of problems.
Okay, so it's not just quantity, it's quality of practice.
Exactly. Like imagine you're training for a marathon. You wouldn't just run the same mile over and over, right?
Right.
You got to vary your terrain, your pace, even the type of shoes you wear.
So we need to expose ourselves to different types of challenges, different algorithms, data structures. It's about making our mental coding toolkit as robust as possible.
You got it. Algo Academy really stresses the importance of getting comfortable with those classic algorithms we mentioned earlier. Searching dynamic programming the works. Think of them as your coding building blocks.
Make sense? Master the fundamentals and you can build just about anything.
Precisely. But Algo Academy also makes this point that I think a lot of people miss. Don't just solve the problem, analyze it afterwards.
It's not enough to get the code working. We have to think about WHY. It works. How we could have done it differently, all that.
You're catching on. It's about challenging yourself to find the most efficient, elegant solution. Compare different approaches. Think about their time and space complexity.
Okay, so we're not just coders. We're becoming coding critics. evaluating our work like a panel of judges at a coding competition.
You could say that. And speaking of competitions, Algo Academy is a big advocate for participating in coding contests.
Yeah, I can see how those would be a great way to train. You're under pressure, you're working against the clock, and you get to see how you stack up against other talented coders.
Exactly. It forces you to think outside the box, come up with those creative solutions, and really hone your problem-solving skills when the heat is on. It's like the coding equivalent of a sparring match.
Sparring to sharpen our coding reflexes. I like it.
But remember, all this practice and preparation is ultimately geared towards acing those technical interviews.
Right. We've got all this algorithmic intuition brewing, but how do we show it off to those interviewers? How do we make sure they see it?
Well, remember that think out loud strategy we talked about earlier?
Yeah, talking through our thought process, even if it feels a little awkward at first.
It's essential. Interviewers aren't mind readers. They want to see how you approach the problem, how you break it down, what options you're considering.
So it's about demonstrating our problem-solving skills, not just our ability to write code in silence.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And another crucial point, don't jump into coding too quickly.
Resist the urge to just start typing away.
Exactly. Take your time to understand the problem plan, your approach. Maybe sketch out some ideas.
It's like planning a route before a road trip.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just start driving without knowing where you're going.
Right. You need a roadmap. And if you do find yourself getting stuck, don't be afraid to break the problem down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Divide and conquer, like solving a puzzle piece by piece.
Now, for those who really want to take it to the next level, Algo Academy suggests diving into some more advanced techniques.
Oh, like what? Tell me more.
We're talking about things like analyzing space-time trade-offs.
Space-time trade-off.
Yeah, that's where you might sacrifice a bit of memory to gain speed, or vice versa.
Sounds like a tricky balancing act.
It can be, but mastering it can really impress those interviewers. They also mention amortized analysis. That's about understanding the average performance of an algorithm over time, not just in a single instance.
Yeah, we're getting into some pretty deep coding territory here. But if it helps us stand out from the crowd, I'm all for it.
And then there's the AI angle. Algo Academy even touches on how AI-powered tools can play a role in developing your algorithmic intuition.
Whoa, AI getting in on the coding game. Now that's fascinating.
It's still early days, but there are already AI-powered code assistance problem generators that can provide personalized feedback, suggest different approaches, things like that.
So AI can basically become our coding mentor.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's really cool stuff. But before we get too carried away with the future of AI, let's bring it back to what we've been discussing.
Yeah, good idea. We've covered a lot. What are the main takeaways you want our listener to really walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is this developing algorithmic intuition. It's a journey, not a destination.
It's ongoing.
It takes time, practice, and a willingness to keep pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
It's about embracing that growth mindset, always seeking out new challenges and constantly refining our coding skills.
You nailed it. And the rewards are huge. Not only will it help you ace those technical interviews, it'll make you a more creative, efficient, adaptable problem solver in your everyday coding life.
This has been incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else from the Algo Academy blog that stood out to you?
Actually, there is. They have a whole section on common pitfalls to avoid when you're working on your algorithmic intuition. And I think it's worth going over those before we finish up.
That's a great idea. Let's
Yeah.
unpack those pitfalls so our listener can steer clear of them. Okay, so we're back. Ready for the final part of our deep dive into this whole algorithmic intuition thing. And wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From what it is, how to develop it, even those more advanced techniques and those AI tools.
It's been a journey.
It has.
Before we wrap up, though, there's one thing from the Algo Academy blog that really stood out to me, that section on common pitfalls. Because, even if we have the best intentions, we can still mess things up if we're not careful.
Oh, for sure. They highlight some big traps that coders can fall into, and I think knowing about these pitfalls is just as important as, knowing the right steps to take.
Okay, let's hear it. What are some of these coding traps?
Well, one of the biggest ones is this over-reliance on memorization.
Right, because you can only memorize so many algorithms, right?
Exactly. And look, knowing those common algorithms is super helpful, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But blindly spitting out code, it won't get you very far, especially when you get hit with a new problem.
So it's not just about rote memorization.
Right.
No, it's about the why.
You got it. You have to understand those underlying principles, the concepts,
Right.
so you can adapt your knowledge.
Okay, that makes sense. What else? What other pitfalls do we need to watch out for?
Another one they point out is neglecting those edge cases.
Edge cases. Remind me what those are again.
Sure. Edge cases, those are like the unusual or extreme scenarios that can totally trip up your code if you're not prepared. Like, what if your input is an empty list? Or a negative number? Or a value that's just way bigger than you expected?
Oh, okay.
So having good algorithmic intuition, it means thinking about those weird cases.
Thinking defensively,
Yeah, you got it.
considering all the possibility.
Right, not just the happy path. And this kind of ties into another mistake they talk about, jumping into coding too quickly.
Yeah, we touched on that before.
Yeah, but it's worth repeating. You really need to take the time to understand the problem, plan out your approach, maybe consider some different strategies before you even touch the keyboard.
So it's like,
Premature coding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Premature coding often leads to solutions that aren't so great
Mm.
and a whole lot of wasted time.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that saying, measure twice, cut once.
Exactly. You want to make sure you're on the right track before you go and start hacking away.
Makes total sense.
Slow down, think it through. Trust me, it'll save you a lot of headaches later on. And then there's another thing, ignoring problem constraints. Those specific limitations or requirements that are usually part of the problem.
Like you can only use a certain amount of memory.
Right, or you have a time limit.
Oh,
Again, people forget to factor that in. Those constraints, they're actually clues. They can tell you a lot about how to approach the problem and even help you eliminate strategies that just won't work. Ignoring them can lead you down a rabbit hole.
so those constraints, they're not just there to be annoying. They're actually trying to help us.
Exactly. They're like guideposts.
Wow, this is eye-opening stuff. I mean, it's clear now how falling into these traps could really sabotage our coding efforts.
For sure, awareness is key. It's about approaching problems thoughtfully, thinking things through, avoiding those common mistakes.
So we've talked about all these practical tips, the pitfalls to avoid. What was the one thing that really stuck with you from the Algo Academy blog? Like, was there a piece of advice that really resonated?
What really stood out to me was their emphasis on embracing the learning process, like developing algorithmic intuition. It's not a one-time thing. It's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's about constantly challenging yourself, exploring new concepts, and being open to different ways of doing things.
It's like having that growth mindset.
Yes. And it applies to, well, everything, really.
Absolutely.
And the cool thing is, the more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is to learn. It keeps you on your toes. Your coding skills keep evolving.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with this. Imagine you're facing a tough coding problem. Now, picture yourself approaching it with this new mindset, this more intuitive sense of how to tackle it, how to find that elegant solution.
It changes everything, doesn't it?
It does. It's not about brute force anymore. It's about strategy, understanding the bigger picture.
And remember, you don't have to go it alone. There are tons of online resources, coding communities, even those AI tools we talked about.
It's a great time to be a coder, that's for sure. So go out there, practice, embrace the challenge, and don't be afraid to, make mistakes. That's how we learn.
Couldn't agree more.
Happy coding, everyone.